Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tailgate Talk. We're your hosts, David and Nick. Nick, side of the people.
Howdy.
So we've got some news this week on Thursday night. Broke all of a sudden, just randomly at what was it, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
It
That
was 4:05 that there was a meeting with
that
the
was today.
Clemson. No.
I'm talking about.
They have to give 24 hours notice. So it was at 4:05 yesterday that the tweet came out saying that there would be a meeting of the Clemson Board of Trustees
Yep.
regarding a contract for an assistant football coach.
And then very shortly after that, at some point, it broke that Brandon Streeter is no longer the offensive coordinator at Clemson. So
And then
all
shortly
of a
after
sudden,
that,
very quick, and then not even an hour later, the rumors and kind of confirmation, but not confirmation that the guy who's replacing him is TCU's offensive coordinator.
Garrett Riley.
Riley, what's the first name again?
Garrett.
Garrett Riley. It was escaping me for a minute. I didn't want to say Lincoln. I knew it wasn't Lincoln. Garrett
Lincoln's the older
Riley.
brother.
Yeah. He's the offensive coordinator. And all of a sudden, later that night, we were seeing videos of Garrett Riley showing up in Clemson. I mean, it was an insane
Turn of
just
events.
couple of hours, really. All of a sudden, Clemson had a brand new coordinator, and no one had any chance to really bring up any drama about who it might be.
There were some rumors of Cliff.
Mm-hmm. There were some thoughts of Cliff. I mean, there was some speculation maybe they'd try and go after Jeff Scott since he moved back to Clemson. But I mean, none of those rumors really got a chance to kind of ferment and create any kind of hype over who it might be. It was like Clemson basically dropped the ball on everybody, saying, "Here you go. This is what's happening."
And I think that this move, obviously, I've been pretty vocal about not agreeing with a lot of the offensive play calling this year. I am sad to see anybody lose their job. It's not fun. That being said, it had to happen because the offensive issues weren't necessarily Brandon Streeter's fault. The problem was he was in the system for, I think his first year coaching at Clemson was 2015. He's been in the system for 8 years, 7 years now. And it just, from what I saw on Twitter, our offensive scheme has pretty much just been very simple, vanilla, bland. Like opposing coaches, when they prepped for Clemson, it wasn't so much they were scared of Clemson out scheming them. It was just Clemson has better athletes. And when you don't have the wide receivers that we've had in the past and the quarterback play dips a little bit, that's when teams capitalize. And that's why Clemson's lost 6 games in 2 years, which is not normal. So I hate it for Streeter. Seemed like a really good guy, but he did have some tendencies that infuriated myself and many other fans. And just something about losing an Orange Bowl just makes Dabo go score Shirth. So it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, hated for Streeter. I mean, he's a Clemson guy from playing at Clemson. First job was at Clemson. Like it sounds like this was where he wanted to be. So you hate it. You're glad he got the opportunity. But this is a situation where we're kind of doubling down that best is the standard. And when the offense, it made some strides this year, but it just didn't make enough. That I think Dabo, when he took a look in the mirror, said that what, there's time for a change. We need to get more explosive. We need to help our defense out. By just being able to score more. So he made that decision. Nick, what do you think initially on going with Garrett Riley as the guy? What's your initial thought there?
I think it's exciting. He took TCU, who I think was like 60th in the nation in offense, and turned him into a top 10 offense in 1 year. he took Max Duggan, who was a 4-year starter who nobody really thought of, into the Heisman runner-up. Like people say that, oh, it's just all air raid. Kendre Miller had 1,200 yards last year, and honestly, TCU. Part of the reason, well, I think you said we were going to talk about the national championship a little bit, but part of the reason they were so outmatched is because their starting running back was hurt. Like I don't think TCU was ever going to win that game. Just looking back, like at how much Georgia dominated, but going into the game, you could have tricked someone into saying, they got a three-headed monster with Duggan, Miller, and Johnson, and it just and it was all due to Riley and Sonny Dykes and their scheme and their play calling. And I saw people say, "Oh, Clemson just got the guy who only put up 7 on Georgia." They said the same thing about Brent when Dabo got him out of Oklahoma. They said, "Oh, you're getting a guy that can't stop Big 12 offenses." Turned into the best assistant in the nation, and um, so I think it's obviously it's a 1 game sample that TCU only put up 7, but that's I'm not too worried about that. I think that it's also needs to be noted that Clemson has better athletes than TCU. So it's going to bring some new life into the program. It's going to bring some new recruiting tactics, which will be good. My main wonder is what's going to happen with the rest of the assistant coaches, namely like Tyler Grisham, CJ Spiller. Just see what happens. Thomas Austin, if Garrett Riley decides to keep them or if he decides to move on from them, I don't know. It'll just be interesting to see. Obviously, I hope that whatever happens, it leads to success. And I think that the offense hopefully gets a little more imaginative, hopefully uses the middle of the field and tight ends. That's all I want. No more screens.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just jump in a little bit to some of the details. I think what I'm seeing reported is it's a 3-year deal. I think it's 1.75 million a year. And then he's got some bonus options like $60,000 if they make the college football playoff, 100K for a top 5 total offense, 50 for top 10. And then he has another kind of structure for if they finish as a relative top 5 or top 10, meaning I guess it's strength adjusted. And then his buyout, it looks like it's 25% of that remaining deal if he leaves early, meaning to take on a non head coaching job. So head coaching job, if he were to move on for that, I don't think the buyout would be in play there. So for Riley, I think it makes all the sense in the world. You're going from TCU where you guys made the playoff your first year. You were 5-7 the year before. Now you go into Clemson, who's got who's probably that next tier brand, the team that's been in the playoff for the 6 straight seasons. And then, the last couple of years has had troubles with the offense that's kept them out. So I think it's a marriage that fits both the university and Garrett Riley very well. So I'm excited about it. I think that it's going to be a good change. I think it's going to put pressure on everyone to say, hey, we're not getting complacent, and I think that's the biggest thing there is that the concern from the fan base has been we're only promoting from within. We're going through it, like people brought up like nepotism as a they're trying to call Dabo for hiring his friends and giving spots on the team to coaches' sons and stuff. Which there are guys on the team that are coaches' sons. But Dabo has been pretty consistent from the start that the best players play. I'm not really seeing Drew Sweeney out there unless we are completely riddled with injuries, which we've unfortunately been last couple of years. So, but it's the best players that have been playing at Clemson. So I think that's a bit of a load of crock that people who just don't like how Dabo runs things kind of bring up. But I'm very happy. I think that it kind of shocked everyone. Like no one really thought that he would do it. And for me, what impressed me the most was the way that it happened. You're hearing nothing about it. The national championship was 3 days ago, and all of a sudden, middle of the afternoon Thursday, we hear this, and it's already clear that he's already got the guy locked up. The guy's on the freaking plane heading to Clemson already. You look at some other schools, and they wouldn't have waited until they had their guy. They would have, gotten rid of the coordinator and then had a drawn out search, made it clear that they're looking for somebody, and the rumor mill would have gone crazy over all these different names being bounced around. Clemson just didn't took the wind right out of that sail and just said, nope, we've got our guy, we're good to go. And that speaks to me about how this program is being run. Is it's buttoned up, it's Dabo's got your back. But when it's time to go, it's time to go. And he's only done this really. This is the second time he's done it.
Yeah,
First one was Billy Napier, and then hired Brent Venables. Now the second firing that he's really had. Yeah, it was really. I think it was Billy Napier, right?
it was. I think it was Steele.
Oh, that's right. Wrong one. I'm all over the place on who it was. Too many names. Now
Billy,
it's
I think Billy Napier was a coach. I
he
think he
was. That's
left.
what I remember.
I
I
think
just
he
didn't remember.
left
I
on his
thought he
own.
was. I couldn't remember.
He was a grad assistant here, and then he came back, was the tight end and run coordinator. Then he was the offensive coordinator, QB's coach in 2009 to 2010. Let me
Yeah, so he
see.
definitely wasn't fired for being the defensive coordinator. I'm completely off there. Thanks, Nick. So just completely, it's that's what I took, was that it just felt very different compared to how other teams, how other programs go about getting new coordinators and new coaches and stuff. And honestly, I kind of prefer this because the rumor mill just doesn't get started. You're not bouncing all these names, and then you basically tell your fans, look, I know who I want, I got him, we're good to go. And now Clemson's just excited about getting to that spring game and seeing that offense at work.
Let me tell you, it's going to be very fun this spring just to see the new life, the new excitement. I'm ready to see what. I mean, my first initial thought was just remembering how many explosive plays TCU had all year, and just it felt like they could score from anywhere. And I'm Clemson used to feel like that. Now it doesn't, and it's going to be great to kind of get new blood in, new ideas, just kind of restart, refresh, and let's go win a championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely caution the Clemson fans on expecting the world week one, week zero in the spring game, seeing us light it up all over the place. It takes time to get things installed. I think Nick, you can speak to that from being a college athlete for what 3 weeks, was it? But
So
it takes some time to learn an offense, and especially if there's any kind of other coaching change that happens. But you know, I think that when it comes to the meat and the potatoes of the ACC schedule, I think that's when you're going to start seeing that offense really click. I think the Florida State game is going to be insane this year.
it's looking like we're going to get two.
Yeah, that is true. It's the first time that we could have two matchups.
I it's going to be okay. Now that you brought that up, I am very mad that Florida State was ranked ahead of us when we won the conference and we beat them head to head in the final AP. It doesn't matter, like who cares? But I was just disrespectful. So they're going to be talking
Feed me
all
that
year.
disrespect.
They're
I
going to be
want
talking
it.
all year.
I want to be pissed off.
All Dabo has to do now is just post that final ranking in the locker room. That's all it takes.
Mm-hmm. We don't need to make up that say people saying that we're going to be 5-7 like Georgia did this
Who
year.
who
We
in their right
we can just
mind?
point to the AP poll and be like, look, they picked Florida State with the same amount of losses, one less win, and no conference championship, no head to head, and they put them ahead of us. Dabo's got all the firepower he's gonna need to motivate those guys.
Who in the world said that Georgia was going to go 7-5? Who said
Kirby
that?
Smart to his players to convince them that someone else did. That's what happened.
That was, and people get on Dabo all the time for saying rest of y'all. And when people actually say it, right? But when Kirby says that they're going to go, that people said they're going to go 7-5, six
Not
and
even
six,
seven and
like,
five. I heard 5-7.
you know what? It kills me that he doesn't get called out for that, but Dabo has been in the past. Like, who in their right mind would say that Georgia was going to go 5? They were preseason number 3.
You were in the top five the entire year.
I think the lowest they were was number 3.
The
Like,
biggest concern I think we had was when they beat Kent State by less than they should have, and
and Mizzou.
everyone was like, "Oh, what's going to happen now?"
Yeah, but even
I mean, I
then,
think you and I were both like that too. I definitely looked at Georgia and said, "I think they're beatable," and then
yeah,
they just kept winning, and then they just the thing is that I think that was the big thing with Georgia this year is that they proved when they wanted to get up for a game, when they the Oregon game, the Florida no, no, the LSU game in for the SEC championship, and then the national championship game. Those games where they wanted to get up and prove we are the better team,
they
went
did.
out and did. The only game that I think was really ever in doubt was the semifinal game against Ohio State, and that's because Ohio State's got insane wide receivers.
Well, you could say Mizzou as well because they were losing that entire game and only started winning in the fourth quarter. No,
Yeah,
but
but even
still,
Missouri, it felt like Georgia was messing around about it. That they were just uninterested in playing, and in the end decided, okay, we're gonna win.
and there's a difference between saying a team is beatable and saying a team is going to go 5-7. I'm sorry, like
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
That was ridiculous. I'm sitting there on Twitter. I'm looking at that. It's like, who? Who's going 5-7? Not Georgia. I'm sorry, Georgia.
The
All right,
crazier thing
time.
is the crazier thing is that he actually got some of those players to believe it.
Yeah, Georgia's a good school. They're smarter than that. But
You would
all
hope.
right, here's national championship talk. Georgia played good. TCU played bad. Georgia, best team in the country this year. I think that was proven. Maybe, I mean, I just love the fact that Ohio State fans are already crying, saying that, oh, we should have won. We should. Same thing every year. Um, props to
I'll tell you
Georgia.
what,
They
the CFP semifinal games best that we've ever had. Those two
100%.
games there. And I think that it kind of shows here with the playoff. Every year it feels like we get 1 to 2 really good games, and usually it's the national championship and then one of the semifinals or just the national championship. This year the semifinals were insane, and then I think it was just a bad matchup for TCU. They a lot of what TCU was trying to do was use the perimeter of the field. And Georgia's speed was just too much. I don't think that
Yeah.
TCU without having their star running back able to pressure get force things in the middle on the run game, and for whatever reason just not. I hope when Garrett Riley gets here that he definitely uses that middle of the field in some deeper crossing routes.
Please.
Uh, but that's kind of how you have to attack an SEC defense is putting the pressure all over the place instead of trying to run sideline to sideline because they will just string you out to the sideline, and that's all they'll
Georgia's
do.
defense was too fast. They to try to do that. Georgia's defense is too fast. They were too aggressive.
And honestly,
Props
I don't
to
even think I think the offense got to the point where they were just trying to make big plays and
no,
get back in the game because they got behind so quickly.
and by so
The
much.
TCU defense was chewed up and spit out like it was a stick of gum. It was
And
just
I think that proves that the 3-3-5 is not going to work against an SEC team, and just because of the way the SEC teams are built. Like, and I'm not saying that because the SEC is almighty. I'm saying that because in each conference there is distinct styles of play. Big Ten is ground and pound. They're going to run the ball 40 times a game. Stout defense. SEC fast, physical. Big 12 is shootouts. Always going to be high scoring. Pac 12 is just Pac-12 is just crazy, just in general. That's my rule. And the ACC, I feel like is a little bit of everything. Like you have some like Syracuse runs the 3-3-5. You got a school like Clemson,
I
Florida
think
State. Like,
the I think the ACC is becoming more and more like you look at all the ACC quarterbacks this year. You need
oh
a
yeah,
good quarterback in the ACC to be able to play well. I think that that's kind of their thing. But for me, I look at it. SEC is made in the trenches. Their
yes,
offensive line recruiting is insane. Um, eh, Across the board, there they get the big uglies all over the place. And then the
them in the Big
defensive
Ten.
line. I mean, I'm sorry, but did you see the Rock Bowers and what is in Washington? I'm forgetting his first name.
Darnell,
Yeah,
what was it like 6'8",
Darnell Washington looks like what's that guy like Sean Oakman from Baylor from a couple of years ago, but bigger.
Oh my
Just
god, that's just not
I'm
fair.
remembering that picture of Sean Oakman at the 50-yard line for whatever game. He's got the crop top going on. Dude is jacked out of his mind, and Darnell Washington makes that guy look small.
Yeah, I just yeah. So I think TCU's style of play, it was never gonna match up with Georgia's. I think I mean, you have to scheme what you have, and for them, the 3-3-5 worked all year, but that's playing against Big 12 offenses that don't really pound it down your throat. They kind of just they're all like it's a lot of passing and then quick runs. Like it's not power, and the SEC is power, and so props to Georgia. They deserved it back to back. One of three teams to ever do it, I believe, one, or maybe four, and they have a real shot to go three-peat. And David Pollock said it to Nick Saban's face, and I think he's right. Georgia is the power of college football right now. Um,
Yeah,
Having Georgia
I
be a
still can't
rival.
believe that Pollock said that right in front of here's the thing, he's not
He
wrong.
said it to
Pollock is
him.
absolutely not wrong. He like that
No,
is how it's trending. Georgia is become a powerhouse. I mean, Alabama had their worst team in years, but you're talking to the GOAT college football coach ever. I'm sorry, it's love Dabo, he's not there yet. Nick Saban is the GOAT. No one else has more championships. Dude has just been a machine in recruiting and just, overall, like he is the best college football coach of all time at this moment, for sure. And David Pollock, right to his face, is saying Georgia is the new dynasty. And Nick Saban's face, it was the most
oh,
uncomfortable thing I've ever seen. He did not know how to react to that because he did not like that at all, but he couldn't
if
argue against it.
if only Georgia played an actual schedule next year and they could actually play each other.
Yeah, that schedule next year for Georgia is a joke.
And they say that the ACC is weak. All right, whatever.
I mean, you could look at potentially. I mean, I think it should definitely be Florida State Clemson should be a top 10 matchup next year,
100%.
especially if Clemson's
Um,
offense shows up. I think right now, like early preseason polls have us at like 13 or 11 or whatever. And they've got Florida State at like 5 or 6.
which I was a little surprised about. Like that seems very high for me because they haven't won anything. Like
And that's the thing. I like Florida State ended the season hot, very, very hot. Jordan Travis coming back is huge. Um, they lost their 3 games to Clemson, Wake Forest, NC State, and those at the time were the best teams playing in the ACC. Um, but you look at who they beat the rest of the season, and I don't think I think maybe one or two of them were over 500 teams. Like, their season, they went through a very tough stretch, and that gauntlet got them. And then after that, it eased up a little bit. And credit to them for, sticking with it and, finishing the season strong. But, not a lot of people talking about the who those matchups were at the end of the season.
right, and they had um. So it was their schedule was Duquesne, LSU, Louisville, Boston College, Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson, and then after Clemson, they played Georgia Tech, Miami, Syracuse, and this was after Syracuse fell off a cliff, Louisiana, Florida, and Oklahoma. And Oklahoma was a 6-6 team in their bowl game.
Yeah, Oklahoma finished the season 6-7. Florida finished the season 6-6. Louisiana finished the season 5-6. Syracuse finished the season 6-4. Um, Miami finished the season 4-5. Or no, that's like I think that's at the time of I'm
So
looking
that's
at
at the
I think at the
time.
time. Yeah. So, but I think all those teams like Miami or Syracuse lost the last like six. I think they started 6-0 and ended 6-6.
Did they win their bowl game?
They might have. They might have been 7-6. No, Minnesota won that game. They
So
beat
yeah,
Boston
Syracuse.
College.
Okay, so they were what 7-6, 6-7. Either way,
They were 7-6.
either way, not as strong of a team. I agree that Florida State's going to be very good next year, and I think that they can make it to the ACC championship. I just think that putting them at 5 preseason seems a bit much. And people can argue about that all they want. I still think Clemson's the favorite in the ACC because they've proven that they can do it. And Florida State hasn't been around for a few years. They won 10 games last year, and I they're talking like they're already ready to take over. They got to dethrone Clemson, and honestly, they I don't know. It's in Death Valley this year. That's going to be a hard matchup.
I mean, Clemson. I know the fan base is pissed that the streak is over. You know,
Yeah,
that's probably the worst taste of the whole season is that Clemson lost to South Carolina at home and ended the streak. That's the most pain I think we've experienced this year. For worse than the Notre Dame game, worse than the Tennessee game. That's the one that sticks in Clemson fans' mouth the most. So I think you come into this year now, and they're going to want to get right back onto we were starting a new streak. This is still Death Valley. You don't come in here and win games. And so I definitely think that for that game specifically, especially if it's like a 7:30, 8 o'clock kick, which I kind of expect with how
I think it will be.
these teams are kind of starting to their trajectories. Uh, I changed it up in time. We're good. We're good. But I think that that stadium is going to be rocking for that game, and I will absolutely take a motivated Clemson with a raucous stadium behind them every day of the week and twice on Saturday.
Speaking of streaks ending, I keep seeing all these South Carolina fans coming out of the woodworks because I haven't heard much from them in the last 8 years. But whenever a recruit's talking about Clemson or something, or whenever a Clemson account tweets something, a South Carolina fan comes back with, "Oh yeah, but who won 31-30? We're better than you." And it's like, okay, bud, you won one game in your last 10. You're 2-8, so ease up just a little bit. All-time series record is still very, very lopsided. It's not a rivalry; it's domination, and we're
I mean,
just gonna have to go.
even if you counted their 5 years that they won in a row, and you count this past year, we still in if you go all the way back to that start of that streak, we're still ahead in the series of just that time 7-6. And the SEC skipped them out on one year. They would have been 8-6. It would have been 8-6 for the COVID year.
And you know what? If they can talk all they want, I cannot wait to go into Willie B. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. Excited for it. Quote that. Tweet that.
Book it. Well, I think that's all we got. Clemson plays Duke 5 p.m. Saturday, the 14th. I don't know when I'm gonna have this thing released, so it might be same day, might be tomorrow. But if you're a Clemson fan, show up, be loud, be proud. Clemson's right now first place in the ACC, so let's
Best
represent.
start ever in ACC play in team history. Shout out Clemson Hoops.
Yep. All right. As always, guys, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.